There are moments in history when silence becomes unbearable, when the cries of children pierce the veil of indifference, when the grief of mothers shakes the conscience of the world, and when the ruins of homes stand as monuments to human suffering. Palestine is such a moment. We cannot look away. To look away is to betray the very essence of our humanity. This is not a matter of politics or borders. It is the story of families torn apart, of fathers digging through rubble with their bare hands, of children asking questions no child should ever have to ask. Why is the world watching and doing nothing? There is a dignity in every human being, a right to live, to breathe, to dream. That dignity is not bound by race, religion, or nation. When that dignity is stripped away, when human lives are reduced to numbers in a news report, we must remember every number has a face, every face has a name, every name has a story that deserves to continue. It is too easy to be numb, to switch the channel, to scroll past the headlines, to reassure ourselves that it is not our fight. But injustice anywhere is a shadow that stretches everywhere. If we do not speak, if we do not act, then silence becomes an accomplice to cruelty. Yet, even in the darkest of nights, there burns a light that refuses to be extinguished. The spirit of a people who have suffered beyond measure, but who still cradle hope in their hearts. The resilience of a mother who sings to her child in the rubble. The courage of a young man who dares to dream of peace, even as war closes in. That is strength. That is humanity unbroken. We must ask ourselves, what kind of world do we wish to build? One where compassion bows to convenience, or one where justice becomes the measure of our shared humanity? The answer is not found in speeches alone, nor in promises whispered across distant halls of power. It is found in the courage of ordinary people who refuse to stay silent, who refuse to let another child grow up believing the world does not care. History will remember how we chose to respond, not with apathy, not with indifference, but with empathy, courage, and action. For to remain silent in the face of suffering is to lose a piece of ourselves. But to stand, to speak, to demand justice, that is to reclaim our humanity. So I say this, let us not be silent. Let us not grow weary. Let us be the voice for those who are unheard, the shield for those who are defenseless, the hope for those who are told to stop hoping. For one day the rubble will be cleared, the wounds will heal, and children will laugh again. And when they do, may they remember that the world did not abandon them in their darkest hour. The truth we face is heavy, and it demands that we do not turn away. When we speak of suffering, it is not an abstract word, not an empty echo. It is real, and it breathes in every shattered home, in every torn photograph clutched by trembling hands. It is there in the silence that follows an explosion, in the hollow eyes of a child who has seen more in a single day than most of us will see in a lifetime. This is not just conflict. This is not just politics. This is human anguish, raw and unrelenting, pressing against the very boundaries of what the human spirit can endure. To acknowledge this suffering is to face the unbearable. It is to stand in the presence of grief so profound it seems to bend time itself. It is to hear the cries of mothers who will never again feel the weight of their children in their arms, of fathers who bury not only their loved ones but also their dreams of tomorrow. It is to witness generations stripped of the safety every human being deserves, the right to close one's eyes at night without fear, the right to wake to a morning without sirens, without smoke, without loss. There are moments when the heart cannot comprehend the scale of pain, when numbers become meaningless because they cannot capture the devastation of even a single life extinguished too soon. Each soul lost is a world undone. Each face gone is a story that should have continued, a voice that should have sung, a hand that should have created, a heart that should have loved and been loved. That is the weight of suffering, and it is not something that belongs to them alone. It belongs to us all, because to ignore it is to deny our own humanity. We live in a world where it is easy to look away, to let statistics wash over us like waves against stone, leaving no mark. But to truly acknowledge this suffering is to let it pierce us, to let it enter our conscience and demand of us a reckoning. It is to understand that when one people are forced into despair, when one community's cries go unanswered, we all are diminished. The suffering is not theirs to bear alone. It is a call, a plea that we must hear. And once we hear it, once we truly allow ourselves to feel it, we can no longer remain silent. Human dignity is not a gift granted by governments, nor a privilege reserved for some and denied to others. It is the birthright of every soul, woven into existence itself. To speak of dignity is to speak of the most basic truth, that each human life carries infinite worth, that every man, woman, and child deserves to walk upon this earth with their head held high, unafraid, unashamed, and unbroken. When that dignity is trampled, when it is stripped away by violence, by oppression, by the cold indifference of the world, it is not only those who suffer, who are wounded, it is the whole of humanity. The child in Palestine who cries out beneath the rubble does not cry in a language of politics or power. That cry is universal. It is the voice of human dignity, calling to us, reminding us that behind every statistic is a heart that longed to laugh, a mind that longed to learn, a life that longed to be lived. To deny that child safety, to rob that family of peace, is to rob them of their dignity, the most sacred thing they possessed. But dignity is not fragile. It does not vanish in the face of cruelty. Even in the harshest conditions, even when stripped of everything material, people cling to dignity as though it were the final treasure left to them. A father who shields his child with his body, a mother who comforts her little one with trembling hands, a community that sings, that prays, that dreams even amid the ruins. This is dignity refusing to die. And we who bear witness must recognize this truth. To honor dignity is to protect it, to defend it with the strength of our voices and the depth of our compassion. For if we allow the dignity of one people to be destroyed, we open the door for dignity everywhere to be diminished. To uphold it, to insist upon it, is not charity, it is justice. It is the very foundation upon which peace, freedom, and humanity itself must stand. There comes a moment when the weight of suffering demands more than sympathy. It demands responsibility. Moral responsibility is not a choice reserved for the few. It is a duty that falls upon all of us who dare to call ourselves human. It is the voice inside that refuses to be silenced when we witness injustice, the stirring in the heart that tells us to act even when the world tells us to remain still. To bear moral responsibility is to understand that silence is not neutrality, it is complicity. And in the face of pain so deep, in the shadow of oppression so stark, we cannot afford to be complicit. When children grow up in fear, when families are driven from their homes, when lives are reduced to rubble and ash, the responsibility does not rest solely on those who commit such acts. It rests also on those who watch and do nothing. Every generation is tested by moments that reveal who we are, not by words we speak in comfort, but by the courage we summon in times of crisis. To turn away, to close our eyes, is to surrender our claim to conscience. Moral responsibility calls us to act not out of convenience, but out of conviction. It asks us to see beyond borders, beyond politics, beyond the safety of distance, and to recognize in the faces of the suffering our own brothers and sisters. It demands that we raise our voices, that we question what is done in our name, that we choose compassion over indifference and justice over silence. We may feel powerless in the vastness of such suffering, but responsibility is not about solving everything. It is about refusing to do nothing. Even the smallest act of humanity ripples outward, breaking the darkness with a flicker of light. And when enough voices rise together, when enough hearts refuse to stand idle, change becomes inevitable. To bear moral responsibility is to honor the truth that our humanity is bound together. Their suffering is our suffering. Their hope must become our cause. And to deny this truth is to deny the very soul of what it means to be human. Empathy is the bridge that binds human hearts across every divide. It is the quiet force that allows us to step beyond the limits of our own experience and feel, if only for a moment, the weight carried by another. In a world scarred by conflict and separation, empathy is not weakness, it is strength. It asks us to listen to the cries of a mother we have never met, to see the fear in the eyes of a child on the other side of the world, and to recognize in them something deeply familiar, the same longing for safety, the same hunger for love, the same right to live without fear. When we allow ourselves to feel what others endure, we are no longer detached observers of tragedy. We are participants in their humanity. Universal empathy shatters indifference. It tears away the shield of statistics and headlines, and it reminds us that behind every destroyed building is a family story. Behind every silence is a dream cut short. It urges us to ask not, what does this mean for me, but what does this mean for us all? The power of empathy lies in its ability to awaken action. When we feel the pain of another as if it were our own, we cannot sit still. We are moved to speak, to give, to stand alongside those who are forced to carry burdens no one should bear alone. Empathy transforms distance into closeness and strangers into kin. It strips away the illusion that suffering belongs to someone else in some faraway place and reveals the truth. Their struggle is part of our shared human story. Even in the face of cruelty, empathy refuses to be silenced. It is the whisper in our conscience that says, you cannot ignore this. It is the force that breaks down walls built by fear, prejudice, and division. And it is in this recognition of each other's pain that we find the seeds of healing, of justice, of peace. To embrace empathy is to refuse the luxury of detachment. It is to declare that no suffering is foreign, no life expendable, no voice unworthy of being heard. Resilience is the quiet defiance of the human spirit, the strength that rises from the ashes when everything else has been stripped away. It is not born of comfort, but of hardship, not of ease, but of endurance. In the face of destruction, when homes are reduced to rubble and futures are stolen in an instant, resilience is the voice that whispers, "We will not be broken." It is the act of standing again, even when the ground beneath your feet has collapsed, even when the weight of grief seems impossible to bear. Hope is its companion. Hope is fragile, yet it is also unyielding. It survives in the smallest moments. A mother singing softly to calm her child amidst chaos, neighbors sharing the little they have with each other, children still daring to laugh despite the ruins around them. These are not grand gestures, yet they are powerful acts of resistance. They say to the world, you may take away our homes, you may wound our bodies, but you cannot extinguish our spirit. Resilience and hope walk hand in hand, carrying a people through the darkest nights. They are what allow dreams to exist, even when reality feels unbearable. They are the fire that keeps a community alive, that insists tomorrow must be fought for, that a future of dignity and peace is not only possible, but necessary. In this way, resilience is not just survival, it is a declaration of identity. And hope is not just a dream, it is a promise to generations yet to come. We who witness this strength must understand what it means. It is a lesson for the world that true courage is not found in the ability to destroy, but in the determination to rebuild, not in the power to oppress, but in the refusal to surrender one's humanity. Even when surrounded by loss, resilience and hope remain unshaken. They are the testimony that darkness cannot last forever, that no injustice can erase the will to live, to love, to rise again. And in their endurance, we are reminded that hope is not naive, it is necessary, the light that guides humanity through its darkest trials. There comes a time when every society, every generation must look into the mirror of its own soul and ask, what did we do when faced with injustice? Did we remain silent, hiding behind excuses and distance? Or did we answer the cry of humanity with courage and conviction? A call to conscience is not gentle. It does not knock politely. It shakes us, unsettles us, refuses to let us rest until we face the truth. It demands that we see suffering not as someone else's burden, but as a responsibility that belongs to us all. To hear this call is to understand that neutrality is an illusion. When lives are being destroyed, when dignity is being denied, to remain silent is to stand with the oppressor. Conscience does not permit us to take refuge in comfort or to disguise indifference as balance. It presses us to choose, to stand on the side of justice, to use our voices, our influence, our very presence, to bear witness and to resist. This call is not only for leaders, though leaders will be judged by how they answer it. It is for each of us. It is in the conversations we hold, the truths we defend, the actions we take, even when they feel small. Conscience tells us that no act of compassion, no word of truth, no stand for justice is ever wasted. It reverberates, it inspires, it adds to the chorus that says, this is wrong, and we will not accept it. Answering the call to conscience means daring to imagine a world where human lives are valued equally, where suffering is not ignored because of where it happens or to whom it happens. It means holding ourselves accountable to the highest measure of humanity, empathy, justice, and truth. One day, history will ask what we chose. It will not remember our silence kindly, but if we answer this call, if we rise, if we speak, if we act, then perhaps the generations to come will look back and say, they did not abandon their humanity when it was tested. They stood. They chose conscience over silence. And in doing so, they chose hope. And so we arrive at the heart of it. We have spoken of suffering, of dignity, of the responsibility that weighs upon us, of empathy that binds us, of resilience that refuses to break, and of the conscience that calls each of us to act. All of these threads are not separate. They are one. They form the fabric of our shared humanity, fragile yet unyielding, wounded yet unbroken. The measure of who we are is not taken in moments of ease, but in the shadows of hardship. It is there, in the face of injustice, that our character is revealed. To turn away is to lose a piece of ourselves. To stand, to speak, to act is to affirm that humanity is not dead, that compassion is not forgotten, that justice still matters. Let us leave no doubt where we stand. Let us choose to be voices that cannot be silenced, hands that reach across divides, hearts that refuse indifference. For when the dust settles, when the pages of history are written, what will endure is not the might of those who inflicted pain, but the courage of those who rose against it, the hope of those who believed in tomorrow, and the humanity of those who stood together. Let us be counted among them.